Deep Dive DL. My name is Sarah Hoffman, and I'm the ecosystem builder of Project 412. And so my role with Project 412 is to make sure that there is a vibrant and well-connected and inspiring ecosystem for all the entrepreneurs and community members. So thank you for coming out today. We have a really special week guys today. Oh, and we have two. Yeah. We get to be out here at the orchard on this beautiful fall day, so we're so lucky. We're here at Maple Hills Orchard, and we have Gary and Julie and John and Jonna. And so we're just going to ask them a little bit about how they got started. So tell us, I mean, I know you were at NDSU first. How did you get into the orchard business?
Well, I grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and I guess I had farming in my blood. I'd always wanted to be a farmer, and I just went to school too long, I guess, and ended up as a professor at North Dakota State University. And my areas were environmental sociology, sustainable agriculture, and community economic development. So much of what I was teaching at NDSU, in theory, I wanted to find out, does it work in real life? So we moved out here, and oh my goodness, we had some real wake-up calls on the realities of farming and agriculture. But we started the orchard, the project, in 1999, and this was just a played-out alfalfa patch, and even the alfalfa wasn't growing. So we started planting trees, and as fast as we planted trees, the deer came right behind us and ate them right off. So eventually, we did put up the deer fence and did buildings, and then in 2004, we were actually able to open the orchard and the business itself. And I just commuted back and forth to NDSU, where I was a faculty member, until 2019, retired, and now we are full-time working with the orchard. In the meantime now, my wife, John, and I, who worked with me as we pulled weeds and watered trees for all of those years. We are in the process of stepping back from that, and our daughter Julie, son-in-law Jonathan are in the process of taking over the project.
That's awesome. So why apples?
Well, apples seem to be the thing that we could do and still have another job. If we had livestock, that would be something that would require a good deal more. And I thought, what could be more difficult than putting a stick in the ground, watching it grow, and having the apples come from that? Oh, my goodness. There was a lot more to it. There were some learnings that we had along the way. We started a list of truths when it comes to agriculture. One of them is weeds are. That's the beginning. What do you do with it? And different kinds of farmers will address weeds. Some will spray them with herbicide. Others will do a lot more tillage. So they have organic or they have no-till. But we had to address how it would work here. Another one is that stuff eats stuff. And that's especially true with insects. So insects really like to eat apples and other of our grapes and raspberries. So we had to figure out how are we going to address that. Another is what you feed grows. It's kind of like children. If you feed them, they actually grow up. Well, that means that we have to find ways of nutrition, fertilizers along the way. The other is energy is needed, whether that would be solar energy from the sun to make sure that we have adequate cholesterol growth, or even energy needed to run our tractors. We would love to switch away from petrochemicals and just do battery-operated equipment. So all of those are some of the many things that we've learned along the way.
So when you realized that there was a truth to learn, what did that look like? Did you know exactly what to do, or how did you figure it out?
We're discovering that this is continuing education. even though I may have gone to school too long, that only gives you a license to learn, really, doesn't it? And that's what we are doing here. It's all experimentation. And next year we'll be having our pumpkin field, and Julie and Jonathan are talking about having half of it in cover crop without putting plastic on the rows, biodegradable plastics, and the other half without. Well, it's an experiment, and we'll actually see which of these methods will produce more pumpkins for us.
That's really exciting. Are you gonna invite kids in to see stuff, like the different things that you're doing with the pumpkins and stuff next year?
Well, so John and I at this point are kind of weekend farmers. We have other jobs down in the cities, and so we're only able to come up over the weekends. And so I know there have been a lot of tours with different school groups that mom and dad have done during the week. And it's more during the season where there's actually pumpkins that you can give away, or an apple you can give away, or a little bit of honey for the kids. So I think with the pumpkin field, anyone who wants to see it, of course, can come out and you pick pumpkins. So they'll be walking all over it and get to see kind of the finished product of our experiment. But people really don't come out over the spring and summer. We're not open. The store is not open. So that's really where we get down and we actually do the work of the agriculture bit and try to grow stuff versus more of the open and social bit.
Okay, and you mentioned you do some classes out here under your canopy and stuff?
We're open on the weekends to the general public, but on the weekdays, we also do tours with youngsters. We have school buses of first graders, kindergartners. There are homeschoolers that will come out and make arrangements. We've had several school groups from White Earth come, and they're just the best kids in the world to work with. We have 3 programs. One is the pumpkin program, and we will take the kids out on our apple trolley. It goes out through the orchard, makes a big loop, and comes back, and we stop at the school part of the pumpkin patch, and they get to go out and pick them. But we also talk about the background of what a pumpkin vine looks like, that it's dioecious, which means it's the full families. They're both boy flowers and girl flowers. And we have an apple program where the kids actually get to taste several different apples, and then we very judiciously describe what they are like. And the kids will say, well, that one has a red blush over the yellow or the green, and this one is a bit more tart. And it's amazing, the kids really like the tart apples, so they'll have that. The other is our honey and bee program, where we actually get into a beehive without bees in it. They can see how the frames are all laid out, and then how the different bees, the queen, the drone, and the workers all work together. And having 50,000 bees in a hive is amazing for them. And I tell them we've named every one of those. But those are some of the kinds of programs.
Well, that's so great that you do so much with the community. What made you decide, and how did you get connected with the community? Like, what made you decide to go out and do all that outreach and bring people in?
Well, part of it is to be involved with the community. We look at this as what assets would a community have and we have that we can share back and forth. And if we would consider that we have natural capital, natural assets right here, if we were to use this with the social aspect, the social capital, and connect those two, then we can begin to spiral up for the community from the human capital, social capital, natural capital, and it all works together. So with that in mind, we started a vision. One was to simply be a profitable business. We wanted that as sustainability, but one that's aesthetically pleasing. So we have worked on the landscaping. John is outstanding at doing the layout for the flowers and the where different things go. Second, we want it to be a hospitable center for the neighborhood and the community. So it is intended to be a gathering place. We have all the different beverages. Jonathan has been amazing at coming up with different beverages. Julie is in the back then, actually making them, and John is making them, and we have people sitting around doing that. We wanted to be a model of sustainable agriculture, and not that we have all the answers, as I said, we're continuing to learn that, but also a model of creation care. We believe that this is God's world, God's creation, and we will be gone long before this place, so it will continue on. So what do we give to continue that, and hopefully future generations? And really a promoter then of fair local food systems. So it's not just about bringing things in from around the world as much as local food. So we also have local artists and local potters who sell things here as well to build that sense of community.
Fantastic. So what's it like working with family?
Just grab the mic. No, it's been a wonderful journey, actually. I think back to when we first were engaged in meeting John and Jerry for the first time, and I'm a young 20-year-old, and I think we did the hokey pokey for a birthday party, and an adult birthday party. And all I can think to myself is, what would my best friend Jesse think of me right now in the hokey pokey? And it was just kind of a moment where I just fell in love with this family, and they're wonderful people. It's been such a journey to be on. Gary is such a good teacher. I know that's what he did as a profession, but he just exudes it from his entire character, his entire being. Very, very good at asking you the right questions and kind of helping lead you to the right conclusions about certain things. And Jonna, man, she's not only a wonderful cook, let me tell you, I've gained a lot of weight married into this family because of the food that we get to eat, but she also just is an encouraging person to be around. So to come up here and take over this operation was something that my wife and I had talked about. We kind of joked about it when we first got married. We were joking. He was joking. Here we are, 15 years later, and God has kind of put on our hearts to kind of take over that process. How do we care for the earth? How do we do it in a way that's sustainable? How do we also make things grow by not spraying chemicals and not using harmful things, not only to people, but to the earth itself. So, and to be a gathering point for people. I think that's the other thing, is we're very community focused as well. And so just having John and Gary kind of be our mentors in that, it's just been such a wonderful process.
Is there anything about running an orchard that surprised you?
Yeah, I think what surprised me most of all was, stuff eats stuff. I mean, there are so many different pests out there, and that's something we're really focusing on this next year, of using an integrated pest management system. Like, how do we get other pests to eat the pests that are eating our apples or some of our other fruits? And that's been a process. I mean, there's been a lot of research this last year that's gone into that. There's been a lot of planning that's gone into that. We're trying new things that we've never tried before, and specifically nematodes, which are little wormy guys that help kill some of the apple borer. But we had to buy new equipment for that. We had to buy a new sprayer because we didn't want to buy a used sprayer that had chemicals in it, and then we're putting that on the land, right? So, I think that's been the biggest thing for me, is stuff eats stuff. That's been the hardest truth to learn. How about you?
The hardest truth for me has been the lack of predictability. For example, last year, we had a pumpkin patch, our first time planting a pumpkin patch. We started off, and we had talked to Mom and Dad. They were gone that weekend that we were planting. And they're like, oh, you can get it done in a few hours. And so John and I went out there, and a full day later, we had half a pumpkin patch planted. So called mom and dad that evening, like, what are we doing wrong? And they're like, well, actually, you can just pop those little pumpkin seeds in the ground and make this tiny little hole, and then, put a little horse manure or whatever on top. And we've been individually making big old mounds and then putting little pumpkin seeds along the side, and then like we had a process. And then dump water on it by hand because, of course, the irrigation system wasn't out yet. So then the other half of the field, we went through and we just popped stuff in as fast as we could go to get it done before we had to leave and go back to work. And just seeing the difference in how those two grew. I don't think the second half got water for a few weeks. And so that was interesting. So then this year, we're like, okay, that was a learning curve. Let's try something else because the weeds, of course, took over on both sides last year. And we thought, we'll do less weeding in the pumpkin patch, find ways to make that happen so we can concentrate on the trees. So this year we put down corn plastic and irrigation. There was no mounding. There was just sticking holes in plastic, sticking seeds in, putting, we didn't use horse manure this time. We used some other fertilizers. And we got rain at all the wrong times, and then I think some of our rows might have gotten washed out. I don't know. There were no pumpkins that came up in some of the full rows. So not quite sure what happened. And by the end of the season, we had a small amount of small pumpkins compared to last year where we had a bumper crop and we were fertilizing the backfield with pumpkins at the end of the season. And I was counting on a, big old harvest this year because that's what we had last year with limited effort. And this year we had, put so much more effort into the planting and the plastic and everything else. And it didn't go as planned. Same with the trees as we're going through it and we're trying to do battle with some apple borer. We have been through different phases this year. So first off, we're like, okay, there's this DE earth stuff that we can sprinkle on the chickens. It's food safe and supposedly it kills bugs. So we went through some of the apple trees, saw where the apple borer crap was, and we sprinkled DE all over that. And it did absolutely nothing. So then we're like, okay, let's try neem oil. So we went through and we had little sprayers and we sprayed the trunks with some neem oil to try to get the eggs. We'll see if that worked. I don't know. There was no immediate signs that it worked or didn't. And so then we took 2 weeks with metal sticks. So we'd go tree by tree with a metal stick and an X-Acto knife. And if we saw grass, we'd sit there. It would be about 20 minutes per tree. And when you have hundreds of trees, more than was probably practical. And we killed hundreds of apple borers with sticks. And at that point, John and I looked at each other and said, this isn't working. Because each apple borer is going to be laying hundreds of eggs. So if we miss one, it's going to essentially replace itself and create about 20 more apple borers. So we did some research. John did a lot of research and came up with the nematodes. And then started planning for next year. And we have really big plans, again, just like that pumpkin patch. And we'll see if it works. But like I said, what I've learned is nothing's predictable. So we're very hopeful with our pest management plan for next year. But it's yet to be seen if that works. And if that doesn't work, back to square one, figure out what does.
Gary, did you have any experiments that you tried that went a bit awry when you started?
I think one of them was trying to find apple varieties that work well. As you know, with climate change, global warming, we're shifting from a zone 3B to a 4A, although that is a slow thing, and the different types of trees that will grow is changing. But we can probably tell you now more varieties that aren't really adapted to our climate up here than what we do have. There are several. We've got a listing of, with our about 700 trees in the orchard, of the kinds of trees that we are growing that we find work well here. But there are others that we really had high hopes for. So we put maybe a row of trees in initially that aren't here anymore because they just weren't adapted. So it's been a lot of trial and error, experimentation, and it's kind of like life like that, isn't it? We go day to day and say, what's going to work today? what isn't, what does the day hold for us? And it makes every day exciting, and that's, I think, what makes agriculture exciting.
Very, I am opening it up for questions from people. All right, Tim, you're up. You told me always have a question.
Okay, so I have a real question and then first question is not really a real question, but like, are you worried that the nematodes are gonna take over and do something that was not intended?
That's a good question. I'm not even gonna try to tell you the scientific name of the nematodes because I'll butcher it. But we did our research on that, and these are beneficial nematodes. These are not the same nematodes that would go after maybe some of your plants in your garden or even squash or anything like that. These are nematodes that specifically are carnivorous. They go after other bugs. So the concern of them going after maybe something that is, we're trying to grow or it's not really that big of a concern for us.
They don't really travel either, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the ones we have don't necessarily travel far and wide. So we sprayed them specifically around the base of each of the trees. So they're not going to crawl out and say, get the bees or something like that. They travel through soil and water. And we have such sandy soil, we don't have standing water or anything like that. As soon as the rain comes, it drains almost immediately. So with the nematodes that we're using, I think they're going to be pretty much where we put them. And I think they're also ones that last about 6 weeks and then their life cycle's over and they die. So they're not going to be there forever. So next year, part of our pest management plan is to actually do 3 applications of the nematodes, just because it isn't a one and done. They do go away.
And just on another note, I did get a video actually of the nematodes. Actually, they will hunt the apple borer, and I do have a video of it on my phone where we actually caught them, and they were actually killing the apple borer. So it was a couple of weeks after the spray. And we were opening up the tree, and they were the little wormy guys, and they were like that. So that was really awesome to see.
And Jim, you had another comment?
Exactly.
You said you had a question and a comment also?
No, that was a good question. I thought it was kind of a facetious question, but it ended up being good job.
Billy, you mentioned that this wasn't the best pumpkin growing year, right?
Yep.
But I'm looking out at what you have out here. There's a lot of pumpkins out there that I can see from here. And I was also thinking a couple of years ago, the apple growing wasn't so good. Am I right, Gary? There was as you said, unpredictability, right? And weather and rain and all that business. But what do you do in that moment then? Because you've got pumpkins here, even though you didn't have a good growing year. And I know a few years ago, Gary, you didn't have a good apple year, but you still had apples. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, so when a crop fails, I guess the first reaction is panic. But then after that wears off, part of the community we're growing is not just with the people or right around where we are, Detroit Lakes, Frazee, but it's also with other Minnesota growers. And so we do have a partnership with other orchards, other pumpkin growers. So when one of our crops doesn't do so hot, we can kind of call up the troops and say, hey, does anyone have some extra pumpkins somewhere? Does anyone have some apples? And we've built some relationships then with some other orchards that we use ours first. And if we need to supplement, we can supplement just to keep the season and the business going for the whole time. Yeah.
Part of it is that we feel that we have a responsibility to our customers. And one of the things that's so fun is to show what kind of things that are available in this state. So the University of Minnesota, over the course of many years, has developed a number of different varieties of apples. One of our newer ones that will have available as it comes into production will be Kinder Crisp and also First Kiss apples. And what we hope to do is be able to introduce these kinds of products to our customers. We call it our Taste of Minnesota program, where people can see the wide range of apples. And some of them we may not be able to grow right here in northern Minnesota, but maybe a county or two further south they can. So that's part of our introduction of amazing products from Minnesota to our customers. So when we talk about local, we see local as not just immediately here in the Detroit Lakes or the Lakes region, what the 412 region, Amy and Sarah, Michelle, but rather certainly through this broader region.
That was part of my question too, is that you kind of leaned into a little bit is we've heard from so many entrepreneurs about, it's a combination of a little bit of chutzpah, guts, blind faith, just kind of taking the lead, but also leaning into some mentors and other experts out in the field. And it sounds like you're doing that. I was recently at the Arboretum at the University of Minnesota, and it's just amazing, what they've got going on there. And I was wondering what other resources you have tapped into to try to build what you're got.
Well, I think I've had some, and you have also. I would have to say that there are many other mentors around who are doing local foods. One of them would be Ryan Pesch, and Ryan is with Manna downtown, but he's also with the Minnesota Extension Service. And Ryan is an energetic, passionate host of many knowledgeable topics. And with that would be the Sustainable Farmers Association that he's engaged with. Another for us has been Thaddeus McCammett. And Thaddeus is an expert when it comes to different kinds of fruits and vegetables. So Thaddeus, we met one day when we were beginning to plant trees. We hadn't seen him before, and he just walked in unannounced, never met him before, yanked a tree out of the ground and said, "Well, this one's dead." He wouldn't go anyway. But we have absolutely come to love Thaddeus, and he has been so helpful along the way. But the University of Minnesota and North Dakota State University, there are many, many sources like that we have found in our area and beyond.
Yeah, I guess when we first decided to come up here and take over the orchard, we did join the Sustainable Farmers Association just to get some ideas. Went to their big conference there. We've also, of course, had Mom and Dad, who are just a wealth of resources and have been doing it for 20-some years. And then recently, and John's going to roll his eyes on this one, but with AI being developed, you have to put in the parameters and everything else of your question, but it's given us a lot of ideas to contribute to our brainstorming. Like even when we're looking at, well, what eats apple core? And we're getting on AI and asking, well, what is going to work? And we've tried some of those ideas. And one of the ideas that came up initially was the nematodes. And of course, then we researched the snot out of it to make sure that it wasn't going to actually be more harmful than good. But we're working on some cider now. Right now it's for personal use. But we're looking to find ways that we can maybe sell that in the future. And then using the AI saying, hey, these are the apples we have. We know that the taste profile is the sweet, the sharp, the bittersweet, the bitter sharp. What kind of combination, what ratios of these apples that we have might make an interesting cider, and come up with some ideas and then try it out and see what a computer knows about taste. I don't know. It's been a very strange process with the introduction of AI, but it's also generated just so many ideas that we can kind of chase down and experiment with and really springboard to a lot of other ideas.
I'll just piggyback off the AI thing. I use AI every day to help with creative ideas. That's been such a powerful tool for me. And like you said, not everything, don't take it as gospel or anything like that, but as an entrepreneur myself, I use it to generate those creative ideas because in a problem solve, to help me problem solve. That's I don't think people think of AI necessarily as an idea to problem solve, but you can type in those parameters and then and here it generates a couple solutions, and you have to know enough to go, this solution is actually a viable one, and should I test it, or this one's not going to work, right? So, but yeah, AI is a very powerful tool for that. So who would have thought that AI would actually help out farming? There you go.
A couple questions. Diversification obviously is part of your planning. And so I'd like to hear about your grapes. And secondly, with the variety of trees that you have, they do not cross, and you end up with hybrids. They stay within their own, right? I wonder how that works, why you don't end up with hybrids between the various. And lastly, about the festival that you had here, that in September, and just a little bit about how that went.
Well, thank you on that, Holly. I'll just speak about the festival. That was with the Sustainable Farming Association, as well as with other organizations in the area. I mentioned the Extension Service with the West Central Initiative and others. So there were quite a few organizations involved with that. We had a couple hundred cars in a pumpkin field way back where we just parked them, along with food trucks and vendors and live music. And it was there were classes, everything from how to grow herbs to how to grow mushrooms, how to grow garlic. So all of that would be aimed at a local food system, and we continue to emphasize that emphasis on local. But it's also where we learn a lot from each other. And one of the things that we learned as we tried is the necessity to be diversified. If all we grew was one type of apple, just say all Honeycrisp out here, nothing else, one bad year and that would deeply affect us. But we end up having several other kinds of crops out here, everything from the apples, pumpkins, squash, grapes, raspberries, and the bees. The grapes have been particularly fun. We have about a dozen different varieties, and who would have imagined that we could grow so many different types of grapes out here? All of them are, quote, table grapes. You can eat them. Some are really good, but some are especially agreeable for making wine, like Marquette or Frontenac. So we set it up as a U-pick type of enterprise, and people have never picked grapes before. So we sent them out with a little basket and a clippers and said, sample as much as you can. I won't be happy unless I see purple dripping off your chin when we come back in. And it takes 3.5 pounds of the grapes, so kind of a mound in that little basket, to make a batch of jelly. There's a lot of jelly that got made, I think, this fall around the area. So that would be one of our ways of diversifying is with the grapes. When it comes to the other question you had about the apples do require cross-pollinators. So the way that we set up our trees would be every other row would be a different variety. So when the bees come out, they'll visit one tree and get pollen and then go to another tree as they're looking for nectar, and then all of that cross-pollination takes place. And if people wanted to then take a seed from that apple and plant it, who knows what it's going to be. It might be Honeycrisp with a Regent, with a First Kiss, with a who knows what it's all going to be. But interestingly, that was one of the ways that the apple industry started in Minnesota about 150 years ago.
Being a wonderful Indian finance.
Go by that.
Do you use any internships to help you?
We have not had opportunity to do that. I know that Ryan Pesh with his work has done that, but we have employed a lot of youngsters out here that we've thoroughly enjoyed, and they are now off making the world a better place, all the way from New York to the West Coast. And so we do see that as one of our missions is to be a place where we can employ folk, or at least provide a background information. We've had youngsters come and we would buy them a suit that would be for getting out into the bee yard and make sure that they're well protected. We don't want to have any mishaps on that. but it's fun to see the look on their eyes when we open up a beehive and the bees buzz all over, and they realize that they don't really care at all about that youngster. They're after the flowers. And for them to get over that fear of bees, realize where crops are grown and where honey comes from, I think that we've started to provide that kind of education.
Okay, I have two questions. First question kind of goes back to what you were saying about unpredictability within your crops. So my question is, do you guys have a goal of a yield for how many apples you're trying to produce, how many pumpkins you're trying to produce per year, and are you able to share that? And then second question, with the two of you taking over within the next, whatever that plan is, do you guys have additional plans for expansion? You talked about cider, but what about expanding into other seasons, like maybe doing a flower garden or something like that? Can you talk about your next 5, 10, 20-year plan?
Absolutely. So as far as goals for produce, at this point, it's as much as possible. We've been doing a pumpkin field. This is our second year doing the pumpkin field. So our goal is more last year than this year as the goal. We have about an acre for the pumpkins. And so really, if all of the vines produce a number of pumpkins, we have more pumpkins than we know what to do with. So this year was an anomaly. I know Mom and Dad have had pumpkins other years as well. And this year really was a rough year. I don't know if it's when we planted or if it was the plastic. I know we had tried doing some rye vetch between the rows and it has some allelopathic qualities, which maybe inhibited some of that growth. I'm not sure what happened. But I also know with climate change, this year we had a lot of rain when we didn't need it and no rain when we did. So it delayed planting and everything else. And I don't know if this was just a one-off or if this is going to be the new trend. We're going to have to find ways to work with it. As far as the apples, I know as of a number of years ago, parents were thinking that they were going to retire and shut down the orchard. And so as trees started dying off with apple borer and winter damage and everything else, it really took out a number of the trees. And then John and I got this idea into our head that, well, we'll kind of take it over. We'd like to do that. And so we've been doing a lot of replanting. And so even as you look out now, there's a lot of really, really young trees. And so it's going to be a number of years before they come into production. And so as far as what do we want? Well, we want as much as possible, but ultimately we'd be looking at between 200 and 500 bushels would be our goal for the apples. And then the pumpkins really are, like how it works is the apples are a long-term investment. It takes a while for them to grow and produce. Pumpkins are like a quick shot in the arm of funds to help us reinvest in other things we want to do. So that's kind of the division of those. So as we're looking to the future, we've talked about high density planting to increase the number of apple trees that we can get in the fenced in area of the orchard. And so what that might look like is rather than having the trees about 9.5 feet apart, we might have them say 4 or 5 feet apart, and then they're going to be wired up. There's a bit of a different rootstock involved, a different way of pruning, and they end up looking more like vines than trees. Frankly, they look weird, but it also expands the number of apples we can get in a given area. I don't know if we're going to be able to do the whole orchard like that just because of some of the soil quality issues, but that's one way that we're hoping to expand our apple production. We're also looking at some point as we're getting 200 to 500 bushels of apples off of our own land to then expand the store and building area. Probably need a new building with that. So at this point, we're kind of playing with the idea of this building would likely become more of a production room where we can wash and store and refrigerate the apples we get. Have another building that's going to be more of the store and cafe area. Hoping to expand to doing just some simple lunches, like soup and salad and little sandwiches or something like that. But at this point, we just don't have the capacity to do it. Even seeing a busy weekend, people are lined up to the door and all the tables are full. We don't have, at this point, the ability to do that until we get a new building that has a little bit more room for that kind of thing. The other thing we're looking at is also expanding the season, and we're playing with the idea, because at this point, we really are weekend farmers. We work all week, and then we come here and work all weekend, and then we go back and do it again. And when we're up here full-time in about 5 years, I think it's going to expand the options we have. And so we've been talking about, well, how do we do it? Do we want to expand just the fall season, or do we want to start looking into, hey, can we make it earlier in the summer? And so last year, one of the things we thought about was, hey, it would be kind of fun to expand some vegetable growing and have a little vegetable stand or whatever else. And we had probably 10 years worth of seeds, some still good, some still bad, that, you use some one year and then they go into storage. And so we planted basically all the seeds we had and ordered some more and had an enormous garden and killed ourselves trying to keep that weeded. And we drowned in vegetables essentially and decided, well, let's concentrate more on the trees, because none of us really like doing this part, and Ryan Pesh does it so nice. Let's let him have that corner of the market. But we've talked a little bit about, well, do we expand some raspberries? Do we look into blueberries? We have a lot of Bali cherries that come up just a week or two earlier than the apples. And they make probably the best jelly that you'll ever have. It tastes like a solid cherry, like pie filling. They're fantastic. Do we do more with that? We have, oh my gosh, tons and tons of asparagus planted, which would be really early season. Do we sell that, or do we just keep eating it all ourselves? Like, what do we do? And so there have been a number of questions. We've talked about winter. Like, well, we have walking paths. Can we turn them into ski trails? Do we have any hills that are steep enough for some solid sledding and get the next building to be more 4-season? This is just a 3-season building, so we can offer hot chocolates and whatever else. And I think there's a lot of ways that we could expand, but I think our first priority is the trees. We are ultimately an apple orchard, and those trees need to be at top production, filled in as much as possible, and I think that really is where our initial focus is. You want to add anything?
Sure. I think also expanding to events.
Yes.
Talked about. So
Yes.
one of the things we've talked about is doing like a family movie night out here, and doing like an outdoor movie where people can come and enjoy that. Or maybe even doing some weddings. If people want to do a wedding out here or something on the orchard, like this would be a good location to do those types of things. But again, trees are the priority right now. That's kind of just more future, looking into the future. What's that going to look like?
When we started the project, this whole business, there are a lot of books that I read about how to start businesses. And we discovered that when it comes to how to transition or close a business, there were fewer of those. And so what we have discovered, that John and I have taken it off and come to our plateau. And we're relying on now the next generation to take it to the next level. And so when they're talking about these futuristic plans, it's really out of our league, and we look forward to that. You asked Jessica about numbers, and last year there was a youngster who was out on the ride on the apple trolley, and he said, I think there are 1 million pumpkins out there. So we said, well, that will be the official count for the year. And that is going to be our goal from now on, to have 1 million pumpkins.
Great. A couple more questions. So first up, if Gary knows, my husband is a beekeeper, and so there are parts of the agricultural cycle and duties that he loves and parts not so much. And so I'm very curious with all 3 of you, because you all have very strong backgrounds in different areas. What is your favorite part? Like, what lights you up, and when it's rough going, what keeps you engaged?
Man, there's a lot of favorite parts. I actually really enjoy working on the trees. I enjoy pruning. I enjoy harvesting. I even enjoy going to get the apple core. So just being out in nature, being out in creation, just for me is, I don't know how else to describe it other than worship. I guess. It's just such a privilege just to be out there, especially, I'm stuck in an office 9 to 5, during the week, so just being able to be outside. So my favorite part is being outside, except for, here's the worst part. I hate weeding. I do not like weeding. Weeding is not fun. I do not like being on my hands and knees in the dirt and weeding and doing all that stuff. So when we had that vegetable garden,
Bugs that only eat weeds.
I wish I could do that. Or some, but I'm sure you introduce those and they're gonna go after some of the.
I think my favorite part, I have a few favorite parts. So in the beginning, spring, picking out what we're going to plant and planning what varieties of pumpkins, what varieties of things go into the garden, what new trees we're going to get. That part, just like the hope of, is this going to work? This is going to be awesome when it comes. It's really, really a hopeful time. I also really enjoy the early mornings. So when you get out and it's still nice and cool, the sun's coming up, everything smells really good. I enjoy a solid early morning, just being out in the orchard doing almost anything. Almost anything. So asterisk on that, I'll come back to that. And then the harvest. So after all the excitement of putting stuff in the ground at the beginning of the year, going and seeing kind of what you got at the end is really, really encouraging. And then I do like playing in the dirt. So I have another 9 to 5, fairly stressful job. And then to come out here and just like stick my fingers in warm dirt as I'm planting plants and seeds and everything else is just really, really refreshing and healing. Part I absolutely hate, I hate weeding. I hate weeding so much. And I can do a little bit of it. But just this last week, my son, he's 8, was telling me about his thoughts on the orchard, and he's like, that saying, Mom, first time's funny, second time's silly, third time's spanking. The beginning of the year is fun, but I feel like I'm being spanked now. I kind of feel that way with weeding. The first few weeks, I don't mind pulling a few weeds, but when you have an acre that you're on your hands and knees weeding, or you're going through hundreds of trees and you're weeding around the base, by the end of it, you feel like you're being spanked. Like, that's not that fun at all. Necessary, but not fun. And so I think a lot of that we've been trying to find ways to cut back on the weeding, like the corn plastic and some other things we've been trying to cut back on the weeding. Because I don't know if any of us enjoy the weeding.
I'll just start with the part that I probably dislike most. And as your husband is involved with honey extraction, we have the same thing here, and there's sticky and glue everywhere with the honey. And when it's all extracted, then I have all of that cleanup and the beeswax and it sticks, and you try to heat it up and then it won't go away. So that's the part probably that's the biggest challenge. The thing that I like best are watching people's eyes out here. It's the connections. I look at what we're doing is making connections, building relationships. One of them is our main clientele is with younger people, little kids. We have it specially designed for young people. So to watch the connection between grandparents who bring up their grandkids or the young families that are coming out and to seeing how those relationships are being connected. So that's one of 3 types of connections we try to make. The other is that we want to connect people with the land. So as people go out and walk around, hear the laughter, hear the connection, saying, isn't that beautiful? Look at those leaves as they're making that connection of people to the land. And the other connection that we really want to emphasize is that connection between these people that are here with the Creator, to say that God made this. Isn't that cool? Wasn't God smart when God had put all of this together, and we can see the Creator in the creation itself. Just like you can look at a painting and say, my goodness, you can tell a lot about the painter just by looking at that painting. So those are 3 connections that I love to see being made around here.
Right, and then the last question is, how can we as a community better support you?
just coming out and enjoying the place, like to have the vibe of people here and enjoying nature, enjoying each other, really is encouraging. Even when it gets a little busy and we look out the window and there's kids playing in our little corn maze and there's people sitting out on the benches and tables for hours just dipping their ciders or chocolates or whatever else. Like this is why we're here, to be able to really create almost a magical place where people can come and just sit and be and relax, connect with each other, connect with the earth.
I don't know if I can stop that answer. But I mean, here's a practical thing. I mean, how can the community help us? We are on Facebook, so I mean, like our page, comment, and share on some of our posts. That helps get the word out about why we're out there. The other thing is I'm just going to piggyback. I think one of the things I've been saying is come enjoy nature with us. And so it's just kind of we want to invite people out to enjoy not only the community with one another, but enjoy the nature together. So just come out and enjoy the space.
Well, naturally, I could say, come out and buy apples. A great way to support us, but I think that there's such mutuality with community. So I'm hoping people will come out and buy apples, but I hope that they'll also go over to a berry patch by Goreham, go over and see another orchard over by Audubon, go out and see some of the other activities, get out and see the trolls in the area, support local. If you can support local, it spirals up, and as we support one activity, we support multiple, and it just builds community.
Well, thank you all for sharing today. You did a great job. Everybody give them a round of applause. When I woke up this morning, I did not think I'd be learning about carnivorous bugs.
John, are you going to post that video of the nematodes with the?
I mean, I'm talking in it and I'm saying, I sent it to you guys. I'm like, Gary, I think this is COVID. So I probably won't post it, but if you want to see it, I'd like to show it to you.
I might get you some pictures. All right. Well, thank you for sharing today, and thank you everyone for coming out to Deep Dive DL. We enjoy having you, and it is every third Thursday of the month. So keep an eye on our Facebook page for the next one. Have a good day.